Hey folks, I hope you are having a fantastic day. I am creating this screencast for you because I am a little bit worried that we are going to run out of time. We did lose the day to college apply day, which is totally purposeful and appropriate, but that does put us a little bit behind, especially since you also have tomorrow off. So somewhere in the course of now and Monday morning, please make sure that you are listening to the screencast and taking some notes on it so that on Monday we can go ahead and catch ourselves up and hit the ground running. So as we move into our stranger writing prompt, hopefully you have looked over your notes and your sheet of possible free response topics that apply to the stranger. Your first goal is to look over those prompts and choose one that you feel that you can craft a strong writing piece on and that you are willing to sit with and work with for about a week. So that's your first charge. And then from there, we are going to create the writing draft from the notes that you've taken in your book and the notes that you've taken on your different quadrants and on the different presentations that we did for part one of the text. So as we take all of the different notes that you've created and you've selected your prompt, we want to go through the systematic steps of creating a more cohesive draft. So we're going to look at crafting your thesis statements, which we've done some legwork on as a group and as individuals, and I'm feeling pretty good about where you're all at in terms of creating a defensible thesis. Now we're working on tightening up that sophistication and larger significance, and that will help us in terms of creating our line of reasoning. Now, we are also getting much better at analysis. You guys are using the evidence triangles and creating more developed close reads of your evidence within your paragraphs, which is also good. Our next step is to figure out how to link them all together into a cohesive line of reasoning that builds and supports your main argument. So now that we've got these puzzle pieces of the thesis and the evidence and commentary that helps support it, let's look at how we organize it so that you have a really sophisticated essay instead of a thesis with 3 body paragraphs or 2 body paragraphs. So let's start with what a line of reasoning is and apply it to things that we know. So if you are taking notes on this, as I hope you are, for Avid or for us, your essential question is, what is a line of reasoning and how do I go about creating one? And if you worked with Overton last year, you likely heard this phrase a bit and looked at trying to create one in the different domains of writing that you tackled in AP Lang. And if you had English 100 last year, depending on the model you learned about the idea of creating claims and subclaims. Your professor may have used the term line of reasoning. They may have used organizational structure. They may have used another term depending on the model that you were working with. But a line of reasoning, whatever title we give it, is essentially an arrangement of claims and evidence that lead to a conclusion. In AP Lang and Lit, we employed this term back in, I think, 2020. But what it suggests is that when we read an essay, we are looking for a cohesive essay. In other words, the thesis that you introduce is built up and supported with appropriate evidence and commentary throughout the course of the essay. In other words, it's organized, which makes it easy to understand, and it's sophisticated, and your reader does not have to guess what you're trying to say because you've created this thread that holds all of your ideas together. So you know how to do these things. It's very simply a matter of tightening up that thread that holds all of your ideas and builds your ideas together. And your steps to that are steps that you're familiar with thanks to your previous teachers. You're looking at determining what your thesis is for any prompt. What is your main argument? Whether it's literary analysis, persuasive, evaluative, etc. You want to go through and determine your claims and your evidence, and you started to do that as you read. You were given kind of essential main ideas for each chapter and you were taking notes for those things and putting them together in presentations, bringing them up in discussion, writing on them in independent close reads. So as you were reading, you were starting to curate big ideas about your text. Once you figure out what your thesis is, now you go through those materials and find the evidence that best helps support and build that claim throughout the course of your reading. Then this is where the line of reasoning comes in. Once you've curated all of your evidence, now you've got to figure out how best to line that evidence and commentary up so that your thesis is developed and connected over the course of your 4 paragraphs or your 5 paragraphs or however many body paragraphs that you have. Easily and most simply, we do that with transitions. Several of you are familiar with the model from when you were younger. First, second, third, which is a fine way to begin the idea of transitions and showing a logical organization. But now that you're older, you're taking college-level coursework, the expectation for the sophistication with which you transition into these ideas and build these ideas is higher. And that's why we start to focus on this notion of a sophisticated line of reasoning now. So to come back to the definitive terms, we know that your thesis is your main argument, your main claim. In order to prove that claim, you have identified subclaims that support your analysis. So for instance, if I'm going to tell you, if my claim is that Phoebe and Joey and Friends are eventually going to get together, that might be my thesis. I have to give you subclaims as to why I think that. I might tell you that in season 1, Phoebe felt bad because she hadn't been kissed by somebody cute on her birthday. And at the end of the episode, Joey reaches over and gives her a big old kiss, which to me might be a nice claim because that kiss suggests there's some attraction, which could imply a future relationship. So remember that a subclaim is an idea that you have read, you have seen, that helps support this argument that you've created. And so you want to find subclaims that support that argument. So if I continue along with this idea of Phoebe and Joey becoming a thing, and I introduce in season 1 that they've kissed and they've enjoyed it, I have to look at what comes next that helps me further see that Joey and Phoebe might begin a relationship. And so I might look at what happens in season 2 or season 3 for examples that help show the development of an attraction between them. So to come back to that again, your line of reasoning is the thread that holds all of your paragraphs together. Because if you don't have that sustained building of ideas, then what you have is 3 paragraphs, 3 close reads, each of which match your thesis, but don't connect to each other. So that's going to be the thing that we focus on here. So for instance, again, to go back to the Phoebe-Joey thing, I've got your thesis here, or my thesis. Though Joey and Phoebe were not a couple at the end of the series, the writer's dialogue and stage direction, coupled with the actors' performances, suggest that the two were romantically involved. And then I need to connect and build it. So that is where my first paragraph, my first subclaim may be that Phoebe finds Joey physically attractive, or that she wanted to be kissed and he ended up kissing her in the first season episode. My next subclaim has to come with something that continues to build that idea of the physical attraction that I might have mentioned in the first paragraph. And so maybe I'm thinking about in season 3, as the series progresses, we see Phoebe comment that any relationship between them is coming. And if you're a Friends fanatic, then you will know the season better than me. But there is a point where he makes a comment about a relationship, and she looks at him and she says, "Oh, baby, it's coming," and she blows him a kiss. If I'm building this essay, well, then she's indicated that she's interested, that there will one day be a subsequent relationship. So I've taken this first idea of the physical attraction and I've connected it to this notion of her already thinking that they're going to be a couple, which further comes back to my thesis that a romance between the two might actually happen or have happened. So, and I will continue to build that throughout the course of my next subclaim. Maybe my next subclaim might further suggest their masquerading as a couple in season 7. And then I conclude from there to the point where they actually may have been together for a bit. Now, if you are a Friends fanatic, I know you're blowing holes in my theory all over the place because Phoebe ended up marrying somebody else, and that's fine. My point being in giving you the example is how I'm trying to structure my paragraphs and my subclaims so that my thesis gets a chance to grow and be proven over the course of my paragraphs. So if we were doing this in class, I would be asking you and your friends to grab a show or a comic book or a movie where you will create the argument and the line of reasoning. I actually am just going to ask you to have listened to this screencast and to have looked over your prompts for the stranger and selected that which you want to write on, and then come back to class ready to start to build a line of reasoning for yourselves. In Classroom, you will find, in addition to this slideshow and screencast, that I have included a line of reasoning graphic organizer for you to work with as you start to build this writing prompt and writing sample. And in the course of our next day together, I want to make sure that everybody in here has created their thesis and structured their line of reasoning prior to writing. My hope here is that if we're going through the guided practice together, that constructing the line of reasoning will become a little clearer on this first try, rather than just choosing that you're going to write about, all of the similes that Camus uses in the book that help show your thesis, and all of the existential ideologies that Camus is perpetuating, how those are shown in your thesis. My hope is that in the guided practice, we create a line of reasoning that you have to reference as you write next week, which I hope creates a more cohesive essay for you. So after you've listened to this screencast and taken your notes here, I'm going to ask you to go back to review those prompts again and select the one that you want to write on and access the line of reasoning doc, and at least craft your thesis statement and what your 3 claims are going to be. And then we can come back in together and review your thesis and subclaims, and if they are looking pretty good, pretty solid, then we'll go ahead and start curating the evidence. If they're a little bit chaotic or not fleshed out, then we can have a micro conversation about how we want to flesh them out, and maybe we can find a way to develop your ideas and move them around so that you are creating a cohesive line of reasoning. So to recap, you're going to listen to this screencast and take notes on it, which you've done. Thank you very much for that. You are going to go back and look through the 4 pages of the sample prompts that you can use for the stranger. You are going to pick one of them. You're going to craft a thesis for it. It doesn't have to be a perfect thesis, but it has to be enough where it's defensible and we can start to play with it and you can start to figure out what your subclaims are going to be. Then you're going to determine what your subclaims are. Again, they don't have to be perfect, but they should give you and me both a sense of how you want to construct this response. Then we can talk about how that order is happening, if it's as cohesive as it could be, if it's got the bones to do that, or if we want to shift some things around or talk through some other ideas. So when you come in, you will have the prompt selected, a working thesis, and your subclaims. 1 sentence per subclaim. If you want to do more, you can, but at the bare minimum, come in with the thesis and the subclaims. And we will develop and curate the rest in class. If you have any questions on that, please don't hesitate to email me. But that is what I'm looking at you coming in with on Monday morning so that we can hit the ground running and get some discussion and some writing groups happening. Because in the end, what I'm looking for your next timed write is that I'm seeing a narrow thesis, that I'm seeing you having a complexity or larger comment in that thesis, which many of you are already driving to because you already have notes on the social comment that Camu's making. I'm looking for you to start building a cohesive line of reasoning where you have evidence and evidence triangle structures in those body paragraphs where you have not only presented the evidence, but you have contextualized it and connected it to your subclaim and to your thesis. So that's what I'm looking for in timed write 2. Timed write 1, I was looking to see that you had a thesis and that you had evidence and commentary. We're adding a layer to that now because I'm also going to be looking for how that line of reasoning is developing. So I hope that that gives you enough of an overview to come in on Monday ready to really think through your writing. Again, feel free to email me if you need, and I will look forward to seeing you on Monday. Have a great day.